Hello and welcome to Middlebury 5-0. I am your host, Officer Chris Mason, and with me in the studio today is Sarit Katzew, who is the Director of Religious Education at Havurah in Middlebury.
This is true.
The rumors are true.
The rumors are correct.
So there may be some viewers who are not at all familiar with Havurah, who have no idea what that is. So probably the first order of business would be just a very brief explanation.
What is Havurah?
Yes.
Well, we're a non-profit religious organization, I guess is the best way to describe us.
Okay.
We have sort of two main parts. One is our Hebrew school or religious school program, which is supplementary to secular education. And then the other is the religious community that does everything from religious services to educational programming, social gatherings, really just being a place where people can come and celebrate life cycle events and find support within a community, specifically Jewish, but also we're very welcoming, we're non-denominational, we accept people from all different sorts of backgrounds and traditions, and we don't have any one type of person who belongs to our community. We're very welcoming, and we try to just be a place of support and resource for all sorts of people.
That's surprising. I thought it was exclusively Jewish.
It is a Jewish organization, but because of the way that this community is made up, both Middlebury and the more sort of broad area, and Judaism in general these days, there are a lot of interfaith couples, there are a lot of people who maybe had a very Jewish upbringing and then sort of came away from that and are revisiting it now that they've had their own children. I mean, Judaism looks like a lot of different things. So while we are a Jewish organization, we sort of strive to rise above that and be more than just exclusively and insularly Jewish.
Right. Yeah, and I know that Judaism itself is fairly expansive. There are lots of different
It's the same as Christianity or any other religion. There's different sects, there's different levels of what I would call religiosity. So some people are, very observant, and some people maybe identify as Jewish because that's what their family is, but they themselves aren't a very religious person who's practicing in any way. And we really make room for all of that because everyone's different and everyone comes to the table with a different part of their Jewish identity.
Right. So you're the Director of Religious Education?
Yes, I actually have two titles. It's a little confusing to some, but basically Haveeru is in a time of transition. So it's been around for about 35 years, but it started out as being very grassroots, very small, meeting in people's homes, sort of cycling around to different families. And then as time went on and it sort of expanded, we were able to procure the Havurah House, which is the building on Route 7, which is sort of our home base.
That's on North Pleasant Street?
Yes, it's right across from the Swift House residences, right by the maple fields there on the corner. Just a big white house that was converted to meet our needs. So we have the school upstairs, and then downstairs there's a sanctuary, social hall, kitchen, bathrooms, basement. It's basically just a very old Vermont house that was converted. And because we have that space now, we are able to do many more types of things. So Hafaraz has really changed over time from being this, we're going to meet in your home and do something very piecemeal, to being able to offer all sorts of programming, all sorts of resources. And right now we're in this period of transition. So I was brought on in sort of a dual role, which is something new for Havurah. So part of my job is to be the Director of Education, so I run the school. And then I'm also the Program and Outreach Coordinator, which means I work on increasing membership, increasing our visibility in the community, figuring out what sort of programming we want to offer and what people are interested in attending, and also to inspire volunteers and to invigorate people to sort of take up the mantle themselves, so that it's not just me doing everything, but it's me working closely with our members to say, maybe you're very passionate about yoga, let's find a way for you to lead a monthly yoga class. And again, though we're Jewish, not every single thing has to be through a specifically Jewish lens. We try to tie it in where we can, as I think any nonprofit religious organization would, but there's a lot of room for growth and there's a lot of room for different ideas. So it's a really exciting time now for Havurah.
It sounds exciting.
And in the past, they had Rabbi Ira Schiffer, who's at Middlebury College. He's very well known in the community.
Yep.
He sort of was part-time, shared between Havurah and the college. And then this past summer, transitioned to be full-time at the college, which is what really presented the opportunity for them to say, now that he's going to be transitioning, we need to bring someone in who can fulfill both that role and lead us into this new era of what Havurah can be by capitalizing on skills of social media and teaching experience and sort of a very wide list. And it's funny how it came to be that I'm at Havurah in the first place, because my son now is 10 months old. So last year, when I was coming up on being 40 weeks pregnant, my parents were in town visiting, and they went to attend services at Havurah because they're very religious and they would attend regularly. So they sat in services next to Karen Lefko, who is one of the people who was sort of on the search committee, so to speak.
Oh, I know Karen.
And they got...
Actually, I interviewed Karen's son on this show
great.
A few years ago.
It's a very small world, this
indeed.
Middlebury community. So they got to talking, and what initially came up was I do bar and bat mitzvah tutoring, so preparing students for that process.
Yep.
And they had sort of inquired, do you have a list that you keep of people who do that sort of thing that maybe Sarit could get on? Or, they sort of just broached the subject but weren't looking to land me a job, I guess. So over the course of their conversation, they talked a bit about my background and my skill set. And I guess Karen and I got to emailing, and she sort of said, are you aware that we're looking right now for these two different positions? And at the time they had said either it could be two part-time people or maybe it could be combined in some way, depending on who they ended up hiring and how it worked out. So I basically said, I am interested, but is it something that has to happen right now? Because in about 5 seconds, I'm going to deliver my first child. So if I have to interview this week, that doesn't really work. But if I can come in, next month, once I've had a chance to sort of recover from the experience.
So no, we're going to interview you while you're in labor.
Right, it's like if you want to come down to Porter and stand bedside, then we can do it that way. But no, she was very lovely and accommodating and said, this is an ongoing process, so please be in touch with me. And I ended up doing the interview process, and we sort of just fell in love with each other as a community.
Wow.
And realized that they had a lot of things I was looking for in the next job I'd be pursuing, and I had a lot of different skill set that they were looking for. Some things they weren't necessarily looking for, but that they would benefit from. Because I had been working at Nooney Deli. I actually was wondering if you would recognize me when I saw who you were, because I used to make your sandwiches sometimes when you would come in. I was trying to remember what your order was. I figured I could use that as an icebreaker, but... so I'd been at the deli, and I worked, up until 42 weeks, and then I was on my leave. And I really wasn't looking at the time, but it became clear, both because of just having dealt with labor and delivery and needing to find something I could really do more from home, that it wasn't going to be possible to return to the deli, which I was sad about because I had a very good experience there.
It's a community
kind of,
there's a lot of people that pass through.
Of course. And, I met some of the most interesting people just by... being over the counter and asking, want mayo with that, and striking up conversations. And it was a great way for me, being new to the community, to sort of get to know people and feel at home.
Yeah, I get to meet a lot of new people by stopping them in their cars. And
Well, that's probably not as great an icebreaker for them as it is for you necessarily.
It's a captive audience, though.
Yeah, you can't go anywhere. You get to answer all your questions. And man. So anyway, I had decided that I needed to do something else, and this just sort of fell in my lap at the exact right time. I think their start date they were looking for was like the day I was supposed to end maternity leave. 85% of it was work from home, and the one day a week that I needed to be somewhere happened to be a day that worked with my husband's schedule. So it was just this crazy, fortuitous, wonderful thing that happened, and we all sort of said, hooray, and let's go for it.
The stars all aligned.
Yeah, and it's been a great experience ever since. But it was just sort of funny because I got a lot of questions initially about, why aren't you already a Havurah member, and we haven't really seen you. And I said, I didn't know a lot about you. I wasn't really looking for that. And this all sort of worked out beautifully that brought us together, and now we get to do this good work together. But
and now you're the person who...
Right, now I'm the person who's saying, you should be a part of this wonderful community, and here are all the innovative and exciting things that we're doing, and it's a really sort of funny role reversal. But I'm very grateful, and it's a great community. Just
Sure.
a small example of that. I recently had a procedure done on my foot, which meant that for a period of like a week or so, I couldn't drive. I was pretty laid up, and having a young son, that's a little bit difficult.
Sure.
So almost without any provocation on my part, they put together this whole casserole brigade, and they sent around an email, and they said, okay, who's doing dinner, what nights?
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, while that's wonderful, I'm expecting, someone goes to Hannaford's, they pick up like a boxed salad, and they bring it.
Right.
So people made some of the most incredible food I've had from scratch, these chicken pot pies, these elaborate roasts and breads and full meals, not just main dishes.
Sure.
And they all delivered them to our home.
Wow.
And were extremely accommodating of our schedule and asking about, food allergies and does your son eat things? And it was really just overwhelming. And it was just another testament to how great this community is at taking care of its own, and also just sort of wanting to expand that to the greater community and working with other, not just religious organizations, but just general agencies and people.
So were you tempted to be like, I think my
to be like,
well,
now
I
need to extend this a little bit. I mean, I was tempted because the food was absolutely delicious, but they did it for almost 10 days or so. So we were very fortunate, and I was very happy for it. But I definitely in the back of my mind was like, what else can I shouldn't admit that on television. No. Maybe some of them are watching.
That's right. They're going to be all suspicious when you
well, I did promise to sign up the next time someone else is in need. We'll bake them a loaf of bread or something, because it was just a great thing to do for people in the community.
So I'm curious, what are the qualifications broadly for doing something like this? So you're Jewish.
Yes.
So that would be one thing, like some
presumably that is
Judaism, some
that is a main thing. Yeah. It's interesting because when they did the interview process, I don't know that I necessarily was exactly what they were looking for. Right. I think in their mind it may have been someone that has like a lot of different degrees in Jewish education or something like that, which is something I don't have, and I'm very open about that. I went to Binghamton University for undergrad, and I majored in creative writing with a focus in Holocaust poetry, which is a very strange sort of area of focus that you don't hear of often.
Not especially uplifting,
right?
I'm guessing,
not very sunny, but interesting and important.
True, I would guess with beauty and inspiration.
Of course, but when you're in an interview situation and someone says, what did you spend 4 years really focused on? That's definitely a conversation starter.
Right.
So I think between that and just a lot of my skill comes from my own upbringing. I think people absorb a lot from their sort of schooling and environment. Right. My parents are a rabbi and a cantor, so they're Jewish clergy, not just that they are Jewish, but they are Jewish leaders in the community. And they've both served in national positions for various nonprofit organizations. As I was mentioning sort of jokingly earlier, I lived in Israel when I was very young. So I learned to read and write in Hebrew before English. I went to kindergarten and first grade in Israel. So in terms of language skills and being able to teach that and all of that, comes sort of innately for me.
So you got to say something in Hebrew now.
I do.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's some Hebrew.
נא לבוא לחבורה, כי יש לנו המון פרוגרמים שאתם צריכים להצטרף. Which means, please come to Havurah. We have a lot of wonderful programming you should be a part of.
So it has a beautiful fluidity to it.
It does. Yeah. And I get that question a lot because my name, Sarit, is also a Hebrew word. It actually, and I will admit this on camera, it technically means little dictator. Because the word sar means lord or leader, and if you put it on the end of anything, it's diminutive, so it makes it little. It could also be translated as little princess, but I think little dictator is much
you
more.
Prefer that.
I don't want to say that's more of my personality, but I think it's a funnier and more interesting thing to say to people than, well, my name means little princess. So, the Hebrew stuff comes pretty naturally, and then once I moved back to the States, I went to private Jewish day school, I went to Jewish camp, I led a trip to Cyprus and Israel for teens when I was in my 20s. I've done Jewish song leading. So a lot of it is just through experience that I've had that I was sort of more qualified than someone who may have the piece of paper because of the experiences I've been fortunate enough to have. And I was a little cheeky about it in the interview process because there were those dissenters who sort of said, you don't have a degree in X. If we were to say we have this need, what would you do? Or in this scenario, and I basically just said, ask me. lay out what the scenario is. And for anything that they asked, I was able to, in theory, provide a good enough answer that they felt I could handle it and that I'd be a good addition. And I think I'm also accessible. One thing I wanted to mention in terms of, we're a Jewish organization, but we also have a lot of interfaith couples and families. My own is the case. My husband, Gareth, who actually works at the Mahady Courthouse right here in Middlebury. He's one of the clerks.
Yes, indeed.
He's not Jewish, but our son is, and he's very supportive of our Jewish life. And that really resonates with a lot of people in the community because they find themselves in a similar situation where maybe they have one Jewish parent or they have, grandparents who are Jewish, but they're not really practicing at this point. And I think part of the appeal of bringing someone like me in was to say that, that's not prohibitive. That doesn't mean that you can't have a rich Jewish life in whatever that means for you. And, in my family, we have a Christmas tree in our home. It doesn't have Jesus figurines on it. No offense to anyone who does, but ours doesn't. But we also light Hanukkah candles all 8 nights, and we do a full Passover Seder, and we just made a loaf of challah bread last week to go with our roasted chicken. So, there's ways to do both and to be accommodating of that. And I think for a community that is so mixed, that was a really important detail because they wanted, especially someone running the school who has a lot of children in it who have mixed families, to be able to say, I'm right where you're at. I know exactly what you're going through. I know all of the complexities that come with it. I'm now dealing with those same things, being a mother myself for the first time and thinking about, what is my son's Jewish identity or not Jewish identity going to look like? These are all things you have to sort of think about. So I think all of those sort of added to the qualifications list and tipped the scales when it came to, I don't have the piece of paper, but I have all of this life experience that sort of counterbalances. And I worked at a synagogue in Rye, New York for 7 years, running their office, doing all their ritual programming, putting together service booklets. I've taught students one-on-one. I've taught classes. I have a lot of those types of things as well, which I think help to sort of legitimize and not just say, well, I like it and I'm good at it. I've also had experience and I have people who could vouch for the fact that, I have a valid skill set to bring to the table and I have something to offer. So
you mentioned that the Havurah is in a state of transition now, that it's been expanding and now it's at that point where it's really kind of dynamically expanding. So there are a lot more programs, a lot more activity at the
definitely. One of the things.
What is going on?
One of the things that sort of came to light in my coming on board with Havurah was that they have pretty limited resources in terms of both people who have the time and are willing and have the skill set, and also just this community in general is not very large in terms of a Jewish community. So it became very clear that it's important to sort of reach beyond our walls. So a lot of what I'm doing is trying to work with organizations like Jewish Communities of Vermont, which is a great resource to link all of these different disparate communities together and try to do sort of co-programming. So there's something called PJ Library of Vermont, which provides Jewish books and materials for kids. I think it's till age 5 or 9. Don't quote me, we can check the website. But it's a great resource. My son receives them. They mail you a book each month. And we did a Hanukkah party that was joint with them so that we could get more exposure, so that we could sort of share our resources. And we're trying to do more collaborative stuff like that so that all these little Jewish communities can sort of make up a larger Jewish community. And also just to offer different kinds of programming. So whereas, 15 years ago, Hafaraz religious services may have looked only one way. So, if you're not a person who's interested in coming in for 3 hours of worship in a very sort of old school traditional way, there was nothing else. So if that didn't work for you, you sort of were out of luck. Now, while we've kept that sort of thing going for the people who it is meaningful for, and there is a large core group of people where that's what they grew up with, that's what they're looking for, we've also tried to diversify our ritual program. So now we have children's services that happen. We have every month now we're trying a Friday evening service that's a little more out of the box. So maybe it's musically based, or it deals with meditation and body movement. I mean, we're really trying to think of what are different things we can offer that reach a lot of different demographics, that reach a lot of different backgrounds and interests, so that whoever Joe Schmo Jew is and whatever his desires and needs are, he can feel like, maybe not every single time, but somewhere in our calendar, there's something that meets those needs. And another group that I really wanted to focus on was children under first grade, because our school right now pretty much starts first grade and up. So for families that have a 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old, there wasn't as much of a place for them. So by doing things like having children's services, and we started a play group, which my son is a part of, which meets twice a month on Sundays. Right. And it's, kids 2 and under, and we have sensory toys and music, and it's very informal. And you don't have to be a member or be Jewish to participate, but it's just a chance for kids to interact with each other in a safe environment. And it's been really rewarding thus far. But those sorts of things sort of didn't exist, or they had and sort of fell to the wayside because there weren't the people to keep them going. Yep. So my goal really in this first year, and in a long-term sense, has been to offer lots and lots of stuff, and then the things that people like and want to continue and be a part of, find people to take up those leadership roles to continue, and then phase out the things that aren't as successful, because it's always going to be hit and miss. You can't win every single time, but if you don't try, you won't know. So we're trying to offer a lot of different sorts of things, and then figure out, what is the pulse, what are people really interested in, and that was what our November meeting was about. We had a community meeting. There was a press release of the Addison Independent. I think that's sort of how I came to be sitting at this table, because it was publicized, and I got a lovely email saying, this looks like you're new to this position, and it'd be great to speak with you. So we had almost 50 people show up to that, and many of whom had never done anything with Havurah.
That's fantastic.
And they just sort of wanted to come and hear what is it all about. And we had small group discussions that happened, and people were really inspired, and they were really willing to say, this is what I want from a Jewish community, and take some ownership of it. And we heard a lot of interesting ideas. And then after the fact, we formed an implementation committee to take some of those ideas and really do something with them, because it's one thing to talk about it, and it's another to sort of put them into action. So we put together a small group to say, what are the big ideas that a lot of people were sort of interested in, and what are the things that are realistic, and let's try them. So that's exactly what we're doing with these new services and new programs, and hopefully they'll be successful. And some of the ones we've done thus far have had really good turnouts and very good response, and people feel excited about it and feel like this is a great time. We have new members that are joining. We're getting some new sort of blood, new people on the bus, and that's important too, because you have people who've been doing the same thing for a very long time, and while it is fulfilling and meaningful, you want to get some new ideas in the mix. So that's been a lot of what my focus has been, especially in this first year. So
a lot of religions, a lot of churches, they're out there and they're actively trying to recruit new members, get converts to the religion. Yeah. And my sense is that's not really how Judaism works.
We don't do as much of that. And I can't speak for other Jewish communities, so I don't know what all of them are doing, but
do people convert to Judaism?
Yes, people do convert to Judaism. Right. Very frequently, it's because of certain catalysts like marriage. Like if you fall in love with someone who's Jewish and their family feels strongly, oftentimes the person would end up converting. Obviously, hopefully, they also themselves identify with Judaism and are interested in it. Yeah. But things like that are more common than just waking up one day and saying, hey, I want to try this. We welcome that too. Yep. But more commonly, it's because of situations like getting married or having children or things like that. So it does happen, but for us, our focus isn't so much in sort of getting people to feed into our idea. It's more about, yes, we're Jewish, but we have a lot of common ground. I mean, we all, I would hope, believe in being good to each other and, respecting our elders. And there's certain sort of golden rules, if you were, that defy the religion lines. And so while we do want to recruit people to our organization because we need financial support, we need bodies in the seats, we need people to help run these great programs that we're doing, we're not as concerned with, banging down doors and saying, why are you not a member of our community? And we don't want to put anybody on the spot. That's not really our approach. Yeah. And I think that that's a good thing, because for the people who want to do that and it benefits the organizations, that's great. But for us, it's more about, let's offer the best programming that we can. Let's offer the best ritual experience that we can, and make sure we're putting ourselves out there in a way that people know that these things exist. And then hopefully they'll come to us and be able to have this positive experience and then say, gee, I would love to become a member of this organization. Or even word of mouth is a great way. If someone comes and they have a great time and then they are having lunch with their friend who happens to be Jewish or has a Jewish spouse, and they say, I went to this great program at Havurah, you should really check it out. And we're very open door and inclusive. A lot of our events don't have fees. We are very flexible in terms of our membership structure. There's some places where it's very expensive and it's very rigid and there's all these rules. And with us, we have a fee scale and we have paperwork, but we're also very big on, if you have a hardship, you come talk to us. Right. We'll work it out. We don't ever want someone to feel like because they're not making the big bucks, they can't be a part of our organization or community, because that's just really not how we do things.
How about Havurah in the wider community? How do people regard Havurah? I mean, is there any hostility? Is there any anti-Semitism that's kind of a part of this community? Is
luckily, in my experience, I don't see that.
Right.
That's not to say it doesn't exist, because unfortunately the world we live in, those things do exist everywhere you go.
Right.
But I am fortunate enough to not have seen any of that directly, and no one has sort of reported back to me about that happening. So I would like to think we have a good reputation in the community, and that maybe it's not for everybody, but that no one is sitting at home harboring ill will towards us or anything. I don't think we've given anybody a reason for that.
Sure.
So we're very lucky in that regard, because there are synagogues and different institutions that have struggled with those sorts of things. And I think maybe some of it's also the Vermont sort of ethos of live and let live, and everyone's got their own thing. And I think it's a little more laid back here. I mean, coming from right outside New York City, I can tell you at least the pace and just being able to say hello to someone on the street and not have them look at you like you have three heads is very refreshing, and very around here is a different feeling.
Sure.
So I think we're pretty well received. And again, we don't push ourselves on people, so I don't think that we run into as much of that, because again, we're not knocking on your door and finding out who's Jewish and all that sort of stuff. That's really not it's not our game. So
I mean, you certainly seem to have a great reputation from the people I've spoken to, and certainly the people I know who are connected to Havurah are people that I have a tremendous amount of respect and affection for.
And we have all different sorts of people. That's another thing I say all the time, because people, I think, have this notion that it's one sort of person. And we have all different people from all different walks of life. I mean, we have people who are, faculty at the college. We have people who are auto mechanics. I mean, it really runs the gamut of all different kinds of professions, different ages, different backgrounds, different family structures. We're welcoming of interfaith, we're welcoming of lesbian and gay and transgender community. We really try to have an open door, and we provide resources, we provide a ritual home, we provide a community, and you can sort of do with that what you will. Because we strive to be sort of a positive influence in this community. And that also is reflected through we have a Tikkun Olam program, which really just means repairing the world. So it's community service based. Our bar and bat mitzvah students are required, but hopefully also enjoy doing what's called a mitzvah project, which means they have to complete at least 10 hours of community service with an organization of their choice. So it could be, walking dogs or volunteering at Hope, or, whatever inspires them. But it's this idea of, the world is bigger than just us. We have to sort of look outward. We have to help other people. We're doing a food drive right now for the next couple months, collecting non-perishable goods, all that sort of stuff. And again, I think these are values that transcend just Jewish values. They're human values. At least I hope they are. So we really try to inspire people to take up that sort of movement.
Right. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
Sarit.
Thank you for having me.
Sounds fascinating. Makes me want to go to
Please do.
Myself.
Come, we can Google us, check out our website. We offer all kinds of programs. We'd be happy to have you.
Fabulous. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Until next time, drive safe, and may all your mischief be of the lawful persuasion.